Hello everyone. I'm going to do this in English. Is that okay for everyone? I didn't understand a word of what was said previously, so sorry for that if I missed some very important information. Today I am going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about digital business transformation and why it's increasingly important for organizations. I'm going to talk about design thinking and how that actually can be a lever or an activity within the wider scope of digital business transformation. And I'm going to talk about what design thinking actually means for public services to make it actually very practical for you guys, right? So I actually hope that I was introduced as an experienced strategist. I think it was something like that. And basically what experience strategy means in Sapien Nitro is, put simply, the strategy that informs the design of digital experiences. It's quite a new discipline in Sapien Nitro, and as been said before, we're some type of digital consultancy, and we work with large organizations, and we really help to make them more relevant in the future, right? I mean, we work with lots of what we often call dinosaurs, very traditional legacy organizations, and you can see that there's so much change going on in the market, and we're really trying to keep on building ongoing relevance for them. Oh, before I actually start, I want to say thank you to Anna for inviting me over. It's great to be here. Cool. So let's just start with the beginning. I do believe that strategy is quite straightforward and quite simple. So it's actually the art of getting from where you are to where you want to be, right? So I think that first you need to ask yourself the question, who are you? What makes you unique? What's your organization all about? What are your capabilities? What's your brand? What's your customer experience, etc.? Where do you want to go? What's your direction? What's your vision? And why are you actually going there? And this is for me the trickiest bit. So how are you going to do it, right? So what are your set of pragmatic actions that you're going to take in order to get there? And this is actually summarized what Richard Rumelt writes about. So if you want to read more about strategy, it's an excellent book. It's called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, very binary. And in short, it basically means that we're actually trying to figure out what is important in a reality that is actually ambiguous and messy, right? I mean, the world is getting so complex, there's so much stuff going on, so much data flowing around, and so many opinionated people as well. So we are actually the ones who are saying, look, we need to go that way, because we believe that that is the right thing to do. And it's often a hypothesis. I totally understand that as well. And this is our output, right? So from a very micro level to a big purpose-driven level. So it's on a feature level, product level, services, organizations, and beyond. So hopefully the things that we actually do have a impactful, have a sort of impact on society. We always try to do work that is very purpose-driven. And a recent concern that we actually had with our team was, are the offerings that we have nowadays, are they actually solving the problems for our clients and the problems for tomorrow? And we actually looked at our clients. So these are the biggest clients that we have in our London office in terms of revenue. And we actually noticed that the average company is 124 years old, which is fucking crazy. And I mean, if you look at Barclays, they're the oldest. They were founded in 1690. In that age, people were still driving horses, and they were actually battling with swords, which is quite funny. So you can actually see that there's something going on, right? And I mean, there's still, they have survived change, but we really need to keep on evolving them and really let them think how they're actually going to cope with exponential technologies, etc. So we actually ask ourselves the question, why is tomorrow different from yesterday, right? And the biggest reason is that change drivers now actually overlap. So if you look at the market change, the market is moving faster and faster because of interesting companies doing interesting things such as Uber, Airbnb, Citymapper, etc. And you can actually see that the pace of change for traditional organizations isn't that exponential, right? It's growing as well, but it's not super fast. And in the middle, of course, you have your customer expectation gap, right? So people don't think in terms of different companies and different experiences with different companies. I mean, they just want to get on with their lives, right? So if I use Uber in the morning, but then I land on a website of a government and it's actually not that good, then, I mean, Uber is basically the ones who are anchoring, so they're setting my expectations, right? So for us, the customer expectation gap is something that we really want to bridge. I'm not going to explain why customer expectations matter. I'm just going to let someone else do it.
I was on an airplane and there was internet, high-speed internet on the airplane. That's the newest thing that I know exists. And I'm sitting on the plane, they go, open up your laptop, you can go on the internet, and it's fast, and I'm watching YouTube clips. I'm in an airplane. And then it breaks down. And they apologize, the internet's not working. The guy next to me goes, this is bull. Like how quickly the world owes him something he knew existed only 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, it's so insightful for me, and that's actually where society is going nowadays. Expectations are through the roof, right? And there's this other experiment.
So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now. Gets again cucumber.
Monkey expectations. Okay. Back to the serious stuff. From a business side of things, it's really proven that great experiences, when you actually live up to those expectations, they really generate business value, right? So there's two models that Medallia talks about. So they talk about a transaction model and a subscription model. So if you look in terms of great customer experiences, they really drive up your sales, but they also make the people who use your products and services more loyal. So there's like a correlation between delivering a good experience and actually business value. Those who actually do that really well, I mean, we call them disruptors. And they completely redefine markets as well. So they might not even be playing in your market, right? If you look at the Uber example, they're everywhere. They're in passenger transport, public transport, and private transport. So they're completely changing the game. And past success is actually worth less than ever. So this is the average lifespan of Fortune 500 companies. And you can really see that. In the 60s, it was 62 years, but then in 2025, it's predicted that the average lifespan will be 12 years, which is absolutely crazy. So 89% of Fortune 500 companies from 55 are not on the list in 2014. And in 10 years, it's actually predicted that 40% of all Fortune 500 companies will have disappeared. So the question, and sometimes I show this graph to the clients when I feel that that they have an appetite for having conversations around that, and it scares them a lot, and it should be. So according to us and my team, there's two phenomena that are actually killing the value of past success. And the first one is the amount of time it actually takes to bring an idea to life. And the second phenomenon is the amount of time it actually takes to scale an idea. I don't know if people in the room are familiar with Yo. It's like a very silly little app, which basically it's like a messenger app, but it only has one feature. You can just say yo to someone else, and that's it. And you get a notification that says yo with a funny voice. And it's a very silly little thing, but it's built by one guy in a weekend, and he has reached more than 1 million users, which is absolutely crazy. If you're someone who is in the messenger or communications business, you can actually learn from this, right? And of course, it's never been easier to scale an idea. And I actually took market cap as a synonym for scaling an idea. So if you look at the average Fortune 500 companies, it actually took them 20 years to reach a valuation of $1 billion, whereas, for instance, Oculus Rift, who are in the virtual reality business, it took them, I think, a little bit more than 1 year to reach that same valuation. So in summary, I don't want to bombard you with too many stats. Big corporations live in an age of uncertainty where they can now bring an idea to market in 1 weekend or in 1 day even, and scale them to $1 billion businesses in a year. Times are changing. And we actually believe that the role of experience strategy within Sapien Nitro is actually to become the ones who help clients shape customer expectations, really help businesses to disrupt themselves. So yeah, we actually want to bridge that customer expectation gap. And this is actually a really, really good quote. I'm not going to read everything. This is a quote by Aaron Dickman. He has a company called The Ready, and they're very interesting. You should check them out. And I highlighted the line which I believe is very relevant for today, right? So best practices of large organizations nowadays, they are maniacally focused on customers. They are hypersensitive to friction, both in their internal organizations and how they operate, processes, ways of working, but also in the user experience or customer experience that they deliver. Which actually leads me to design thinking. I believe that design thinking is actually a way, an interesting and proven methodology in which you can think about that area of your business. And I'm going to describe a little bit how I use the design thinking process in my work. So I'm going to talk about a few cases, what I learned, etc., etc. So this is a model that I haven't made. I wish I made this. It looks a little bit complex, and it's actually not. And there's been lots of versions floating around of this as well. So this is the double diamond model. I think it was Design Council who actually released this. And this is a student from Hyper Island who actually created his own version of the the double diamond model, right? There's 2 big diamonds, and this is a process, right? And you can go as fast through it as you want to go or need to go. It works with different dynamics, so sometimes you diverge, sometimes you converge, and this is just a framework, right? So you can do this as many times as you want. And I'm going to break this a little bit down for you to give you an idea of how I actually use this in my day-to-day work, right? The most important thing is that you start with a brief or a challenge or a business problem that a client or company has provided, and then you totally rip it. Then you totally challenge it, and you challenge everything about it. You challenge everything about their business, you challenge everything about their objectives, etc., etc. So let's just zoom in into the first bit of the diamond, the left side of it, which is all about that, right? It's also about doing lots of research and really understanding where the market is going. So you can see that there's primary research and secondary research, and I do believe that secondary is very interesting to understand where the market is going to, so what are trends actually shaping the market, whereas primary research is more about understanding what people are all about, so really going deep into their needs, into their motivations, what people want to achieve, their desired outcomes, etc., etc. And this is a model that I use a lot as well in order to do that initial orientation from a business side of things. So there's a company called Dublin. They're a design agency. They think they got bought by a management consultancy, like all the design agencies are bought by management consultancies nowadays. And I actually use this model not only to think about innovation from a creative point of view, but also from an analytical point of view, right? So these are actually the building blocks of a business model, if you think about it, right? So it has all the elements there, and I actually use it in my orientation to understand what the business is all about. So I'm not going to zoom in into every part, but for instance, I ask questions around profit model, like how are you making money nowadays, and how is this different from what your competitors are doing? Should it be different, etc. I ask questions around structure, so how are you structured as an organization? Is it flat? Is it hierarchical? Who makes decisions? Why? Etc. I want to understand how their products are performing, so which in their product portfolio, which projects are really hitting the metrics, etc. I am interested in their service, so which is actually the added layer to the product portfolio. Are there any specific interactions that clients rave about? I want to know about brand. I mean, what's your story? What are you all about? How are you unique in the market? How do you differentiate yourself? And there's lots of things that I want to know. Of course, I do a lot of primary research as well. I'm now going to zoom in about how I actually come up with an insight. Of course, there's the activity of doing the research itself, and I could give a whole day presentation about how to do primary research, about methodologies, about objectives, how you actually do it, how you organize sessions with people. And I'm going to touch a little bit upon that, but I do believe that for the sake of today, because this is going to be a rapid session where you guys actually have very hands-on activities, that I just zoom in into the stuff that I believe is very practical. So let's just think a little bit more about the second part of the first diamond. And I do believe that insight is quite an important term here, something that you might use as well probably when you're building your personas, for instance. So for me, an insight is a deep and unspoken human truth that actually has transformative potential to a business. And if you break it down, then you can see, I mean, for me, a human truth, I phrase it like this: what people could need, but don't necessarily know they need, right? So it's about finding those emerging or latent needs, where actually if you confront people by saying that, like, hey, would this be useful for you? They would be like, oh yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about this, but this is great, right? And then of course, transformative potential is all about helping businesses create new revenue streams, redefine markets, move into new spaces, etc. I'm going to talk a little bit about public services in a bit as well. I do believe that, I mean, I know that I'm talking a lot about private companies, and I sometimes feel that there's a nuance between them, of course, and transformative potential for public services could, for instance, mean a lot of reducing costs, reducing complexity, make it really easy for people internally who actually serve the public or your users in an interesting way. So I think that you might want to consider having a persona who is not only an end user, but someone who actually serves those people as well, right? Lots of the examples that I've found about best practices of government services are all about that. They're about efficiency, about reducing costs and complexity. For instance, if you actually find out that you have this call center where lots of people are ringing you with the same question, like, why would you actually keep on doing that, right? Why wouldn't you provide a digital service that actually makes information super accessible, that people can find it straight away, and that you can actually, like, let your people do more meaningful things, right? So a company that is, for me, very insightful is Spotify. And I do believe that Spotify is one of the first organizations who really nailed the whole access over ownership idea, right? So for me, the idea, and this is just to give you an example of what I believe is an insight, can be a business insight, can be a customer insight, can be both, ideally. For me, this is the insight behind Spotify. So people don't mind not owning music, right? So music is actually about access. They don't want to have it somewhere on their drive. They don't want to have a file. It's software as a service. And I do believe that Spotify keeps on being insightful throughout the year. So this is the algorithm behind Discover Weekly, which is super interesting. It's based on two variables. The first one is your own listening behavior, so how you actually interact with music on Spotify. The second variable is based on all the other playlists that other users have created, and based on that they create a taste profile and they serve you 20 songs every week. And I'm a big fan of it. I think that 19 of the 20 songs are always like spot on. And sometimes I've listened to them before and I think the system should know it, but I think it's really, really progressive. I think that this tweet captures the idea of Spotify, of Discover Weekly really well. So it's scary how well Spotify Discover Weekly playlists know me, like former lover who lived through a near-death experience with me well. And this is the insight behind that. I mean, I'm a strategist, I'm always thinking about insights, and I know that I'm reverse engineering, but this would be the insight for me behind Discover Weekly. So a cassette tape with your name on it feels like a gift from a music-loving friend. We, as Spotify, could actually be that friend. And then, of course, there's Kanye West. And I do believe that Spotify isn't only insightful as a business, but that they actually created a platform on which other people, such as artists, can be very insightful as well. So Kanye was actually the first one who realized that he could approach music as a service in a different way. And he tweeted a couple of months ago, "Fixing Walls 2 today," which is a song. Worked on it for 3 weeks. Life of Pablo is a living, breathing, changing, creative expression. And of course, and there's Nate Jones of Andreessen Horowitz, who actually says like, updating his album in real time, maybe more than just art, but in fact moving music to more of a software as a service model. So he really understands that he doesn't need to create like new songs all the time to please his customers. He can just create an ongoing, ever-evolving album experience, and it's new and it's fun and it's really engaging for customers, and I think that that is very powerful. So for me, the insight behind this would be an ever-evolving album experience is what keeps Kanye's fans engaged. I'm just going to talk now about a few techniques that I use in order to come up with those insights, right? So what are the things that, the techniques that I'm skilled at and that I think that are actually really, really helpful. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about some cases, just to not give you the theory, but also the practice. So I use one-on-one interviews quite a lot, and I think that one-on-one interviews are really interesting. So I use them a lot with customers, but also with stakeholders. I think that it's important to both understand the business, but also what the customers are all about. And yeah, it's basically to understand people's needs, motivations, and ambitions in both the business context, but also the wider context of their lives, because it's often things in the environment that actually shape how you are going to deliver the experience. So you always have, I mean, if you think about it in like a very simplistic way, you would always have your screen or something that people interact with, but often it's like the whole surroundings that influence what the experience on that screen will be as well. And for instance, one case that I was actually working on was the Metro case back in Hyper Island, so it was actually many years ago, but I still believe that those were actually the best interviews that I've actually done in terms of ROI for insights, right? So Metro actually came to us and they really wanted to redefine their business because, I mean, they're all about like the physical newspaper that you read on the tube or on the bus or wherever every day. I don't know what the creation version is. And they actually wanted to make their business more digital. So both thinking about how they can provide value for customers, but also making their internal processes more efficient. And we took the public transport and we just watched and we just looked at people, how they were interacting with the current experience, so with the physical newspaper. And when there was interesting behavior, we actually tapped on their shoulder and we asked like, hey, can we have 5 minutes of your time? And they said like, yeah, but I need to go to work. And then we said like, yeah, but we'll join you and then we can just walk along the way we can talk along the way when you're walking. So we were talking. And the thing that we found out, I think we interviewed 20 people or so. The thing that we found out is that almost everyone actually read the entire Metro from A to Z. That was like the big theme that just kept on reoccurring, right? It was, of course, not as intense all the time. So sometimes people had, when they were on the bus, only 5 minutes, but sometimes they had 20 minutes, right? So they always went completely through it, but the level of intensity was actually different, right? So that was our insight, and it actually led us to the idea of personalization based on time, right? So we really wanted to make the digital experience personalized but also responsive. So we came up with the idea where you could say, where do you want to go? I want to go from point A to B, and then based on that it would calculate the time, and it would actually take into account the average reading experience of the average reading time of people, and then it would give you every article. But sometimes when it was a short read, it would give you the executive summary of that article, and sometimes it would just give you the full article. So based on how long your commute was, it would actually be responsive. So think about it as like a responsive website almost. So that was Metro, and of course, I think that one-on-one interviews work really well in combination with observations, right? It's very, very powerful. So the second technique is observations, and I think that this is so big because people actually lie, or people don't know what they often do, right? So people don't understand their own behavior, or they actually don't know how they interact in maybe small things in their daily life, or sometimes they just lie because there's social pressure and they're actually supposed to behave in a certain way because society tells them that. So this is not a case that I worked on. I wish I actually worked on it because then now I was a billionaire. But it's basically the Zappos case. So Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, basically observed people. He had this amazing hypothesis many years ago where he basically said people want to buy shoes online. And everyone that he spoke with thought that he was fucking crazy. They thought like no one is ever going to do that, right? But he was still very convinced that people actually want to buy shoes online. So what he actually did was he wanted to observe people, but he did it in a very creative way. So he went to physical retailers of shoes, and he basically took pictures of those shoes. Then he bought a URL, domain name, and he basically put them online, and he created a fake e-commerce website. And his hypothesis was that if, I don't know the ratio anymore, but let's say that if 8 out of 10 people actually put those products into the basket, then my hypothesis is validated, that people actually do want to buy shoes online. Of course, when people put the shoe in their basket, they got like this message like, hey, you've been part of this experiment, blah, blah, blah. But it's a very cheap way of actually validating your hypothesis. And now this guy has created huge business success. And this is for me observations as well, right? So observations don't always need to happen in like real life, face to face, or maybe behind people's backs. But I do believe that you can do this in a digital way as well. And then another technique that I use a lot are diary studies. And diary studies, you need to be careful with them because you really need to understand what is it that you want to achieve. But they're very interesting if you actually, I use them a lot if I don't have a lot of time because then they're actually making their current state customer journey for me. But it helps you to actually think, okay, what are the key moments in someone's life that are at the moment gaps or pain points or like really things that we can tap into. And I'm working a lot on Unilever nowadays. So I'm both working on Axe, the deodorant and the male grooming brand, and Unilever Foods as well. And I did some diary studies with young men and how they actually groom and how they actually care about how they look and how they do their hair and how they use facial creams and shaving, etc. It's a big taboo still. It's very big, but it's an interesting space. And we actually did diary studies, and we basically noticed that young men actually behave so differently on different platforms when it comes to male grooming. Young men are super insecure, right? I went to Reddit, and there's a few topics, and there's guys who are like, I don't know, they ask questions like, do you think that this size or this length of my beard is the right length? But then they almost like anonymize their faces or they blur their eyes, and then people can comment on it, right? But then the same guys, so that's what we got out of the diary studies, they basically, the day after, 2 days after, they take like a selfie and they put it on Instagram and they use the hashtag effortless, right? So there's an interesting mechanic going on, and then you can actually ask yourself, as a brand, as X, like how do we need to interact with them on different platforms, and should we actually create an platform that we can own, where we actually tackle male grooming problems and really talk with those, we call them the dudes in distress. So they're really the guys who have like lots of confidence problems, or maybe have like a dry skin as well. And then we should actually help them with that in that conversation. So we should be the ones that guide them, right? And maybe we don't always like go through the hardcore conversion and like say, look, this X product is the right one for you, right? Maybe we can help them. We can say, look, you can do this and you can do that, etc. Right? So it's an interesting space. And oh yeah, I forgot. So this is basically the slide that I used in order to explain this insight, and I called it the Iceberg of Manliness. So yeah, just to give you an idea of what that looked like. So this is all about being insightful and like really defining rich territories for innovation. Then what I do believe is one of the most important elements of the double diamond is the brief. So the creative brief, call it a creative brief, call it a design brief. This is a brief as well, but this is a brief where you don't know a lot, right? Here you're supposed to know a lot already. So this can be a focus question, often phrased as how might we? If you use how might we, then you open things up, right? So you don't restrict it. How might feels a bit soft, and it has this idea generation, quantity over quality vibe, which you really need early on because you're still diverging, right? You're not like pinpointing on like one idea and trying to execute it, because if you do that, then you might realize that you're actually solving the wrong thing. So focus question is really important, right? I hope that you're going to do it today. If not, if it's not in the process, maybe try to think about it, because it's very important that you're all aligned as a team, as a multidisciplinary team, which problem you're actually solving, because there's so many possible problems, even within the space of public transport, right? So what is the thing that you're tackling? And often, I mean, I noticed that it's better to not go too broad, right? So really try to tackle one thing, because before you realize it's actually a very big thing, once you start to unpack it. So this is an example of a focus question that I actually gave my designers for X. And I asked them, how might X create a space in which it truly listens to young men and their grooming problems and helps them regain their confidence? I tried to make it specific but broad enough so that they could come up with lots of ideas. I mean, because the immediate thing that you could have an answer as is, we're going to create a forum, right? We're just going to create a forum where people can comment, blah, blah, blah. Basically Reddit, but then by X, something like that. So I wanted to keep it a little bit more open so that they could come up with some maybe interesting ideas that I haven't thought about yet. Okay. So that was the focus question. Then if you go into ideation mode, there's lots of techniques, and for the ideation mode I often use the Hyper Island Toolbox. So Hyper Island is a creative school from Sweden, and they created this toolbox where there's lots of idea generation techniques on it, right? So it's all about quantity over quality, it's about building on each other's ideas, etc., etc. It's really cool. And I have one example for such a idea generation technique. So one is called, for instance, what would X do? And then based on the problem that you're solving, you're trying to identify someone who is very relevant to actually solve that problem. So you can actually ask yourself the question, okay, X, doesn't necessarily have to solve the problem. Maybe someone else can do it, and who would actually be a good one? Maybe it's Ryan Gosling, who is actually really well groomed, or maybe it's actually someone who has lots of skin problems, or I don't know, like really try to find someone interesting. And you can do it many times, you can do it with many people, but how would this person, someone that everyone can empathize with, how would this specific person solve this how might we focus question? I think that's a big one. Okay, then finally, it's all about converging, it's all about building, developing, testing, putting something in front of users as well, right? So once you actually generated many ideas, it's time to cluster things, to actually see, okay, where are the spaces? Or maybe there's like a tiny little post-it note which has like huge potential that you think, okay, this is something that we're moving forward with. You can do lots of things. And these are some outputs that I actually use during my build phase. So I'm a design strategist, so I go as far as making wireframes and stuff that could work, but that is not like, doesn't have like the craziest fidelity yet, right? So often in order to communicate a very complex idea, I create vision pieces. And this is actually one of those vision pieces. This is for Vitality, a health and life insurance brand that I worked on, right? So this is really thinking, okay, all these ideas that we generated, how can we build a future state vision, a 2020 vision for these guys? And it has many steps, right? So like the typical customer path to maybe purchase or even like lifetime value, so awareness, consideration, action, retention, loyalty, etc., etc. And you really bring it to life, right? And these things work really well for clients as well. They often like hang them up on the wall because they love it, and they really when there's like colleagues, for instance, coming in and when they're asking them like, hey, what are you working on? Because like that, I'm working on that, which they absolutely love. So this is a really nice way of actually saying, look, this is where we want to be as a company, right? And then you can like map out the existing capabilities that you have for the technologies that you need in order to deliver upon that desired vision. And this is the actual customer experience map that we did for Vitality. It's a beast. It's a monster, right? So you cannot read anything, which is good because I'm actually not allowed to show this. But we actually blow it up, so we print it out and it's really big. And you can really see what all the different actors are in your customer experience. You can see the different tasks that they need to do, their different goals, and then you can divide it into subtasks. And the biggest thing for me is that you actually map out the current experience, that you highlight what is not working, so that are those red dots, and then you actually say, okay, what are the things that we could do, that we could leverage, and then you come up with a list of ideas that you actually, or features, or anything that you actually should be doing, right? Of course, after that you can cluster them and you can really say, okay, this is what we're aiming for, and often out of this you get, I don't know, 3-4 big features, and then you can start wireframing. So then you can like really like make interfaces. You can even draw it. Which actually brings me to my next point. It's something that I use a lot. And sometimes when I sit together with a designer, with like a real visual designer, they often make fun of me. But we always have a very good conversation, right? I use a thing called Pop, and it's an iPhone app. And basically what you do is you draw things with a pen or pencil. You take pictures of them, and then you can like create like areas of links, of hyperlinks, so you can like make like a working prototype, and it's really interesting. And it's not the right thing to do, I know that, but it starts a conversation. I mean, if I would have showed like my designers this, then they would probably like be like, oh my god, Thomas, what are you doing? It's going to be like a late night. But it's actually interesting that you give them some focus as well, and sometimes you can do it together. Prototypes always work. They really start a good conversation. So yeah, this was basically my process, and that is what Anna asked me to explain to you guys a little bit. Now, the big question that I had was, okay, what does this mean for public services, which is a theme of today? Like, what is different? What is interesting? What is the mindset that we need to apply to solving public services and governmental problems? And like I said before, I mean, this is for me like the biggest thing, right? So people don't actually make the distinction between private and public, right? So they just want to get on with their lives, and therefore they really expect public services to up their games, right? I mean, if you look at Uber, Airbnb, Citymapper, Apple Pay, it's so, they're really shaping those expectations, right? So what do public services need to do in order to actually bring themselves up to that same level of customer expectations? And there are actually 3 things that I noticed that the smartest cities are doing amazingly well. So there's 3 big themes, and those are actually going to be the themes that you are going to work on today. I might have changed the wording a little bit, but I kept the spirit of them. So the first one is frictionless buying, right? In private sector, this would maybe be commerce from anywhere. How can you buy stuff on anywhere? Frictionless buying in public services can mean so many things, right? How can you make the process of actually like getting access to a public bike, like a docking station, how can you make that super simple, right? How can you create a frictionless payment? Accessible communication, how can you actually give people what they need, right? So instead of actually, I don't know, having a call center, how can you maybe give them a digital service where everything is like super clear, accessible, etc., right? And then the third one is personalized information. How can you actually personalize the experience, right? Because people don't have a lot of time. How can you just give them what they actually need? That everything that they see, everything that they interact with is like super relevant for them, right? So if you go into frictionless buying, I have many more examples and I can maybe show them in the afternoon to inspire you guys as well. I have now one for each. First one is frictionless buying. So I don't use it anymore because I bought a bike, but I used to use a TfL is Transport for Greater London, and they partner together with Santander, which is a bank, and they have docking stations of cycles all over London, right? And you can just like go and take out a bicycle. But the interesting thing that they actually do is they make it so easy. Like the onboarding process is easy, but then when I'm using the bikes or when I'm about to use or want to use a bike, it's super easy as well. So for instance, in their onboarding process, they use technology that Uber uses as well, where you basically need to take a picture of your bank card, so you don't even need to type the card number or the account number. You can just take a picture, it extracts the numbers, and off you go, right? And the interesting thing is you only need to do it once. So payments are actually running in the background and you don't constantly need to make a payment because it just does it for you, frictionless. And then when I'm in the journey, I get like this code, right? So normally, previously, you would go to the docking station and you would fill in your code, and then you would pay. You would get a code, and then you would walk to the bicycle. Then you would fill in your code, and then you would unlock the bicycle. But now you get it on your phone, so you don't need to go to the. I mean, you need to go to the dock, but not to the machine anymore. So you just like put in a number, you just take your bicycle, and off you are, right? And it says like, hey. Based on your location, it gives you the nearest docking station. Because the bike, when you book it, it's only available for, I don't know, like X amount of minutes. I think it's 10 minutes. And then, you can also see like what your history is, etc., etc. So some additional information. So I think that is a really good example of frictionless buying. Then the second is accessible communication, and this is smarttraveler.gov.au, Australia, and everything is super accessible. I mean, imagine that you're Australian and that you want to travel to Belgium. What are the things that you need to know, right? You know probably a lot about terrorist attacks. You want to know a lot about like how the situation is after the terrorist attacks. You want to know what you need to do if you actually get sick, right? So that's health. And it's super clear. It's clear language. And this all seems like it's very basic stuff. I mean, there's nothing like that blows you away, but that is what often I feel public services are all about, right? It's about really good UX, clarity, giving people what they want, really enabling them to actually get on with their lives, like in their daily lives. How can you make it super, super simple, super accessible, super easy for people, right? Okay, the last example is personalized information, and I've got a video from Civic Insight, and Civic Insight is basically a government service from Palo Alto. And they basically noticed that people had many questions about what's going on in their neighborhood, in their community, right? So, if you live there and if you're planning to keep on being there for like many years, you really care what's in your neighborhood, right? You really want to know what's going on. So sometimes when there's like stuff happening with buildings or they're working on something, you really want to know, okay, what are they going to do, right? And Civic Insight is actually a company that provides value in that sense because they noticed that they had like many calls, right? Many people were calling like, hey, what's happening in the street that is like five minutes away from me? What are they doing? And people were just like getting the same question all over again. These guys personalized the information, so you could really use the digital experience, and you could like go to a map and you could select like a little area that you were interested in, and then you would get updates about what's going on, or you could search for it yourself on the experience. And you could do it however you want. So maybe you want it on a website, or maybe you want to receive an email newsletter about what's going on. And I do believe that that is personalizing information for what you actually care about, right?
Buildings are all around us. They are our homes, our markets, our community centers. When you get involved and decide to shape the future of your community, you need information. Whether you're restoring the vacant theater downtown or making improvements to your home. With Civic Insight, you can find accurate and up-to-date information about buildings, construction, and permits in your community. When you have the information you need, you can make better decisions, contribute to the health of your community, and build the future you want. Here's how. To start, just type in the street name or neighborhood, and right there you can see everything that's happening in that area. Search, click, view. Or if you have a specific address or record number, just type it in the search bar and Civic Insight will take you directly to a page of information about the property. You can view all the information about this property, past and present. You can even sign up for automatic notifications that will be sent directly to your inbox when something changes with this property or with any property. Just add them to your watch list. If you see a Trends main button, click it to see an overview of what's happening in your community. Like where construction hotspots are, or how long on average it's taking the city to process a permit. It's as simple as that. Please check back. The website is updated regularly with new features that make it easy to understand what's going on in your neighborhood.
Shall we build this for Zagreb? Okay, let's do it. Let's do it this afternoon in one day. Okay. These are the 5 takeaways, so the 5 biggest things that you need to know if you haven't followed my presentation, or if you just, I don't know, want to refer back to it. So these are the 5 things that I've learned. First thing, back to the private sector. Fortune 500 companies can keep their relevance in this uncertain world by constantly unleashing initiatives that shape customer expectations, right? So it's important to understand that you need to play a role in shaping that as a large organization. The second one is that design thinking is actually a known way of shaping these expectations. It's a people-centered approach to bringing new products and services to market. I actually should have, I made that this morning, I actually should have added not only bringing it to market, but also like keep on evolving that, right? Because the definition of a product is that it actually gets better over time, it evolves, right? The third takeaway is that public services need to up their game, as people don't see a difference between the Ubers of the world and the way they want to interact with their government. Fourth, the 3 things the smartest cities do amazingly well are adding value through frictionless buying, accessible communications, and personalized information. Of course, there's a layer around that as well about how you communicate this, but I do believe that you need to think about what is the service experience that we want to deliver, and then how do you bring it to the people, right? And then the 5th takeaway is that often brilliant basics are what makes public services really great. Driving costs down, making internal processes more efficient, and delivering great UX are key. Thank you very much.